What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Faith. I'm an astrologer. I specialize in astrocartography as well as money readings. Welcome. In today's video, we are getting into the US and Iran conflict. And if you follow the astrological transits of the year, then you may be already aware how they are, ironically, not so ironically, lining up with the interactions between Mars and Uranus. So recently, the US teamed up with Israel and did missile airstrikes on Iran on on February 28th, 2026. And it has been talks of war and World War III ever since. But if you didn't know, Mars in Aquarius squared Uranus in Taurus on February 27th. But we're going to get into all of that in just a second. So guys, I am not a historian. I am not a politician. I'm just reading the current events here, but I wanted to back up and really look into this story. If you are any type of, like if you watch the news, if you're into geopolitics, then you may be aware of the ongoing conflict that has been a thing for quite some time, some decades, the conflict between the US and Iran. So this has been going on really since the early 2000s, like even before then, maybe the 90s, maybe the 80s. It's been pressure. Okay. The US is also an ally of Israel. There has been some religious implications involved with that. But I'm just going to keep it political here. The US is an ally of Israel and they will go to war on behalf of Israel. Okay. So we're going to back it up a little bit and just really talk about the last year or so. I can't cover the whole conflict, but just to give you some background that this one scenario isn't the first time that something has popped off when Mars and Uranus are in aspect of each other between the US and Iran. And we really can throw Israel in there too because they are involved in this triangle, this hate triangle. I was supposed to say love triangle. It's more of a hate triangle. Okay, basically, I'm gonna go over a couple of dates where Mars and Uranus are aspecting each other, and we're gonna see what happens. And then we're going to talk about the future, aka July 4th, where astrologers are, concerned or eyeing that date because we have Mars and Uranus actually teaming up, which will be even more intense compared to what we've seen thus far. So let's get into it. Okay, so before we talk about what just happened a few weeks ago in 2026, I want to back up and talk about last year, specifically June 13th, 2025. During 2025, and I believe parts of 2024, the US and Iran and a few other countries, they were in talks. Like, let's work this out. Let's be easy. Let's be cool. Oman was the mediator, okay? And somewhere along the lines, Israel is like, nope, just off them. Just send it. And they did. So on June 13th, 2025, Israel sends missiles on Iran, okay? And it is a 12-day back and forth. They're bombing each other. Things are popping off. But get this. On this same day, June 13th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mars makes an exact square to Uranus at 28 degrees. Now, 28 degrees is an analytic degree. It is the last call. It's if you about it, just say that. If you want smoke, just say that. And I guess I guess Israel really want to smoke because they sent missiles to Iran. Now, unfortunately, about 600 or more people died on Iran's side during this 12-day back and forth. And then I believe 12 or more people died in Israel. So I wanted to look at the map to see, okay, what was going on over the actual land at that time. And sure enough, Mars, Uranus, and Venus, ironically, is there. Before I pull the map up though, I want to specify, I said they were going back and forth for 12 days, right? So what was even more interesting about this, which is like when I see stuff like this, it's very hard for me to believe that politicians don't use astrology or don't have astrologers, because they were going back and forth from June 13th to the 24th, the last day of the square. The square no longer, it was like out of range on the 25th. So the ceasefire was called on the 24th. Interesting, no? Just saying. So when I pulled the geodetic map, I actually just used the US Sibley's chart and just did it for like today, current events, or I guess you should say last year. So I pulled it up for that date. And before I get to the US, I want to talk about Iran and Israel. So over Iran, Mars was on the ascendant, Uranus was on the MC, and the part of fortune was on the IC. Now I'll break those three down as best as I can. So Mars on the ascendant, this is okay. This is, again, danger right on your, like if this was an astrocartography chart, the ascendant represents the body. And sometimes Mars lines can manifest as physical danger. And that is directly in like containing you, like your body, right? Even going to the part of fortune on the IC line. In older traditional astrology, sometimes astrologers would read that similarly to the body or health. So I found that very interesting that they did have a lot of casualties, like way more than Israel. Obviously, I mean, they were on the defense at that point because they may or may not have been expecting that attack, but they received a high amount of casualties with the part of fortune being on the IC, which represents home, your inner foundation, your neighborhood, your community, family. So with the part of fortune, which at one point may have represented the body, I found that very interesting because it played out as literally bodies, you know, being harmed, being, you know. And on top of that, Uranus is at the highest point of the sky. It's at the highest point of the chart. It's on the MC. So Uranus represents literally aircraft, aerospace, missiles. It represents technology. It represents unexpected plot twists. And this is the energy of this interaction. Now, what was interesting was Venus was also on the MC over Israel at the highest point of the chart or the sky, over Israel, which was very, very interesting because Israel has like this sisterhood, brotherhood thing going on with the US. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw it, it gave damsel in distress. It gave like, yeah, I slapped her, or I slapped him, the other nation, and the US, I want you to back me up. Like you're gonna come, I'm gonna drag you in this fight kind of thing. Like if you're really my friend, you're gonna help me out kind of thing. Now, obviously it's much deeper than that, but when I saw that, that's the first thing that I thought about in my head. Now, on the US's side, we see Chiron on the ascendant, the wounded healer. This is where wounds are coming up, they're festering up. This is directly about the US as a nation, but also, interestingly enough, the US is the one who called the ceasefire. So I feel like energy was festering here, and concerning the wound of the US, for me, it just seems like the US is known for its militia, and like the US loves to flex its muscle as a warrior, you know, military industrial complex kind of thing. But when you look at the citizens, not to speak for everybody, but it gives like, you don't actually care about the citizens' welfare all the time. Most of the time when the US goes to war, the citizens do not want to go to war. But most of us are also well aware that the country makes money off of war. And that could be partially because they spend trillions and trillions of dollars on this militia. Now, I've seen some interesting takes on this. Even I've been watching a lot of Professor Jiang's work. If you don't know who he is a professor who uses game theory to predict some of these world events. And he's predicted three things. One, that Trump was going to be elected in the last term. And then we would go to a war with Iran. And then the third one that has not come true, both of those have come true, but the third one that has not come true is we would lose the war, or the US would lose the war. So very interesting. But one of the things that he said was, you know, yes, the US is known for its militia, but it's not actually substantially equipped for a 21st century war. So you could check out his work and kind of see, that was in one of his recent interviews. But you can kind of see for yourself, but I did find that notion very, very interesting, especially the way Uranus is involved, the way Mars is involved. And that could be, you know, a wound coming up for Chiron, is like, yes, we are advanced, but do we have the warfare tactics that we need in order to fulfill whatever drive they have for this war? Okay, fast forward to recent current events. So February 27th, 2026, Mars in Aquarius squares Uranus in Taurus. So this square happened around 11:21 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and around 1:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the US and Israel doing missile airstrikes on Iran once again. Y'all can't tell me this isn't correlated. Anyways, now this time Iran was a little bit faster to clap back. Iran said, no, sir, no, ma'am, I'll blow the whole neighborhood up. And that's exactly what happened. Airstrikes went over Qatar, the UAE, Dubai. I mean, I'm sure y'all have seen the videos of people in the streets of Dubai like, whoa, that was a missile. And when I looked at the map for this date, Uranus on the MC, first of all, on the geodetic map, is going to move much slower with these larger planets anyway, but especially on the geodetic map compared to the astrocartography map, these planets move much slower. Now, if you've made it thus far, the geodetic map is different than the astrocartography map because it is a world map where the zodiac signs are just painted on different parts of the world, versus the astrocartography map is really the planetary lines. They are projected out from based on where you were born and the exact time that you were born. Okay, so astrocartography is more personal. Geodetic map is usually used for more mundane astrology or world events. So when I pulled this geodetic map, first looking at Iran, like I said, Uranus was on the MC and Mars was on the descendant, or the DC this time, but still same energy. However, Mars on the descendant, this could be open enemies. Okay, it's on site, you know, we've done this before, and if you want to go, we can go kind of energy, and that is what we're seeing at this time. Now, again, I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened with another square between these two planets, but I digress. Now, something interesting about the US, or about the map concerning the US, would be the Chiron Ascendant line is still there. Now we have a Jupiter IC line there as well. Jupiter on the IC is this protective energy. I want to protect what's mine, very protective of the home. Just overall, Jupiter is in Cancer right now. The US is actually having a Jupiter return because in its Sibley chart, in its natal chart, Jupiter is in Cancer. So it's returned to that same sign. So this can also be inflated ego. This is hubris. This is, I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. I'm big boss. You can't tell me nothing. And if you know anything about our current president, that is the motto that he usually takes. And even Professor Jiang made a good point about how the invasion on Venezuela, it was pretty easy, right? It was just almost like, okay, yeah, that came really easily. So that could have been an ego boost. And now we're moving from an inflated ego, like, yeah, let's take on Iran. Let's do this. So this is very interesting to see here. Normally during a Jupiter's return, things are just working out for you. Your money's looking good, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Just on a personal level, as far as a nation, I don't know if that's true. But overall, this has been very interesting to see. And I see a lot of astrologers have that same sentiment without even looking at the map, just looking at the overall chart. Is like, is America moving from inflated ego right now? And the map kind of suggests that, but we shall see as we move forward. and Mars, as Mars and Uranus gets closer and closer and closer. Okay, now before I end this video, as promised, let's go ahead and talk about some upcoming astrological events where we may see more of an escalation with this current situation or the interaction between these nations. On July 4th, 2026, around 2:08 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mars will officially conjoin or be conjunct with Uranus in Gemini. Now, I just want to back up a little bit. Like right now, we've been discussing Uranus doing its thing and all of these events happening while it's in Taurus, okay? Uranus in Gemini correlates, or, you know, during these times, it was in Gemini during the Civil War for America, as well as World War II. So if you've been around last year, earlier this year, this is, you know, when it switched, everybody was like, recently it went into retrograde. But now it is back direct and moving back towards Gemini. So this energy is very like, it's on site, it's sporadic. Again, Uranus energy itself is very plot twist, unexpected, explosions, literally. Gemini, if you happen to have Gemini placements, or if you know a fellow Gemini such as myself, you know that Gemini energy can be a bit unpredictable, a bit mercurial. We're ruled by Mercury. So it is still, it's plot twist on plot twist. It's expect the unexpected. It's also, we like to learn, we like to acquire new knowledge and information. So one of the things that I talked about in my blog and video for Uranus and Gemini is don't be surprised to see new technology, and also cyber warfare, which I don't know if you are aware, but even during these recent airstrikes, part of another thing that caused a lot of confusion and unrest in Iran is actually that the US hacked, or allegedly, I don't know if they ever admitted it, but a prayer app was hacked saying, help is on the way, hold on, help is on the way, which is a quote that was very similar, almost identical to something that Trump had said before in a speech. So the cyber warfare has already started. But in July of this year, Uranus and Mars will be in Gemini, which is very like, again, it's given on sight, because we have seen all this escalation happen with squares, where it's like, it's a 90-degree angle, it's an interaction. It's like you looking at your opposition from across the way, you kind of mean mugging, you're looking, okay. Now imagine you and your open enemy in the same house, in the same sign. It is up close and it is very, very personal. Like there is nothing but space and opportunity at that point. So I would not be surprised to see explosions. I would not be surprised to see this escalates even more so. I'm not the type of astrologer, like I don't try to make predictions, but this is something that was very, very interesting to see thus far. And I mean, the map is also supporting like something is likely going to happen during this time is all I'm going to say. Okay, one thing that I want to highlight is, again, Uranus and Mars will be at the height of the chart, or at the highest point in the sky on the MC. This is, again, on site, is direct combat. And interestingly enough, one of the things that Professor Jiang said, I know I keep bringing him up, but one of the things that he mentioned was this war may get to a point in one of his predictions where if the US wants to win, they'd have to deploy troops, like on land troops, like direct combat. So it would be interesting if around this time, that is when they deploy on land troops. Okay, and check out his stuff. You can see why he said that, etc., etc. But that is something that was very, very interesting. Like, could this be one of the things that happens around this time? I don't know. On top of Uranus and Mars being on the MC, we have the North Node on the Descendant. This is karmic. This is fated. This is a long time coming. This is karmic enemies. This is karmic conflict. So I'm very, very interested to see what happens during this time. Now, on the US's side, Chiron is still on the ascendant, as well as the sun is on the IC, which in astrology that represents the ego, that also represents presidents in mundane astrology. So very, very interesting to see. And again, seeing if this ego or this inflated ego leads to success or demise is going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. Another thing, taking the astrology out of it, it's America's birthday on July 4th, okay? Whatever, that's not the point. The point would be it's the 250th birthday of America. And normally that mark is when you started to see, like from a historical standpoint, you start to see empires decline. Think about the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire's slow decline, okay? It's not what it used to be. So it's something about that 250th mark where empires start to decline a lot of times out of hubris, out of ego, out of, I got it like that kind of energy. And then it turns out they don't. So this map continues to ask, and even the chart of the US continues to ask, are you reaching? Are you overdoing it? Do you really have it kind of energy? I hope it doesn't all go down, but at the same time, most American citizens don't even want this anyway. But it would suck if we are on the short end of the stick. All right, y'all, that is a wrap on today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments. What are you noticing? What are you seeing? What have you heard? Let me know. And if you need guidance during this time, feel free to book a reading with me. I will link that link in the description below. And yeah, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.